अंग्रेज अपना लगान और न्यूज लॉन्ड्री अपना हफ्ता कभी नहीं छोड़ते. Welcome to another episode of Hafta. We're recording this on the 21st of March, which is a Friday at 11:15 in the morning. We have in the studio our partner organization's editor-in-chief, Dhanya Rajendran. Welcome, Dhanya.
Thank you. I'll be here next week also.
Excellent.
Why are you going? You should have just stayed on.
But not on Hafta. You will be on Hafta, you'll be in Delhi.
I'll be in Delhi, I mean.
Okay, fine. Also, Manisha Pande, our managing editor at Newslaundry.
All of us are wearing white.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Safedi ki chamkar.
And Raman sir is not on Hafta this week. We will be joined, though, in a few minutes by the editor at The Wire, Seema Chishti. And let's see if she's wearing white. That'll be a completely black and white Hafta. Before we get into the headlines, I would like to again remind everybody with this QR code that you see here, and there is a link in the show notes for a new project, the impunity of India's police. It will be a joint News Minute, News Laundry project where we'll have at least 8, if not more, journalists, reporters, and producers who will be fanning around at least 5 states, if not more. Basant, Prateek, Maria, Anisha, Janvi, Harita, Kora, Nidarshana, did I pronounce that correctly?
You did, yeah.
And Jisha. And producers who we are still figuring out. I don't know if Priyali is going to be traveling or Ashish, our 2 producers here. And what they will be investigating is from Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Maharashtra, Uttar Pradesh. Police excesses take many forms. There was that horrific instance in Tamil Nadu where the guy's teeth were broken. UP, we hear cases all the time. Delhi police, back in my day, which was notorious, now is actually one of the better ones. Can you imagine the world we're in? In spite of the fact that there's that video of them hitting someone, making him chant Jan Gan Man.
During the Delhi riots.
And yet there is no justice on that. So police is the most frequent and obvious interface that the Indian citizen has with the state, and it is broken. It is devoid of any trust, and it is the first step towards completely having no trust in the system. And we will be doing a series of investigations not funded by advertising from either Sarkari ads, which you see are full everywhere, or ads of large corporations and industrialists, many of whom are aligned with various governments. So do scan this QR code, click on the link, support our journalism, because the News Minute and News Laundry do not look at ads. We do not look towards advertising to support our journalism. We look towards you, because when the public pays, the public is served. So please support our journalism and pay to keep news free. And also we have our project which has been going on for 4 months just because right now Delhi environment air is breathable. It's not great. It's nowhere in the headlines, but this is still extremely toxic air. It's just by North India, Delhi standards, it's not so bad. We're going to be running this campaign through the year. You can participate by filing RTIs, by supporting our journalism, by telling us what the AQI in your area is, because it's no longer just a North India problem. It's not just UP, Haryana, Rajasthan, Delhi and Punjab. It has reached Bombay. The AQI in Bombay last month was worse than Delhi. So do contribute. Go to the News Laundry website and click on that. Are you guys also doing this? Because Bangalore doesn't have an air pollution problem, but you will soon unless you participate.
No, I think slowly the air is becoming bad. But we should start focusing. And one thing I want to say is that, whenever we talk about environment projects or we talk about environment journalism, everybody is very encouraging and they will say that please cover more. But I've also realized that is the one that people pay less.
Yeah, it takes the longest. We've also noticed that. Yeah. So do support our journalism and pay to keep news free. Let's get the headlines from Manisha before we start the discussions.
Yes, communal clashes broke out in Nagpur this week. What happened was that VHP and Bajrang Dal were holding a protest demanding the removal of Aurangzeb's tomb. Soon rumors broke that they have desecrated Quran. They've burnt a chadar which had Quranic verses written on it. After this, police complaints were filed, but all hell broke loose. Mobs were out. In this case, at least the police was under heavy, they were at the receiving end of a quite a bit of mob violence. About 30 or so police people were injured, including women officers. Stones were thrown at the police. Meanwhile, after all of this, there was curfew in Nagpur. RSS leader Sunil Ambekar said that Aurangzeb was not relevant. After discussing him for 1 month straight, suddenly Aurangzeb is not relevant. And the CM said that people have gotten emotional after watching Chhawa. So it's no responsibility of the politicians. Blame the movie.
No, also I watched even after the RSS, senior leader said this. At least 2 channels, one of them being
TV
the gold
news did
standard.
not stop. Yeah.
The gold standard being India Today. From morning to evening, Aurangzeb, dude, you guys have nothing else to
It's
cover.
pathetic. It's actually getting so. The whole month, actually, they've discussed Aurangzeb.
I don't know what
the
these
whole
reporters do when they go. What do the editors tell them? What do you have to report on this week? It's just disgraceful.
69 people have been arrested so far. The Punjab police detained several farm leaders, including Jagjit Singh Dalewal in Mohali, and dismantled structures at 2 protest sites along the Haryana border. The farmer leaders were detained when they were returning from a meeting with the union government. Fresh clashes in Manipur's Churachandpur district led to the death of 1 person and several being injured. A shutdown was imposed in the district on Wednesday. Every week we're hearing of some or the other casualty from Manipur. It just is not stopping.
Yeah, it isn't.
In news from the courts, the Supreme Court recorded an undertaking from the Election Commission that it was willing to upload booth-wise voter turnout data on its website after every phase to address allegations of widespread discrepancies. This is good. Transparency always helps.
But I don't know why the Election Commission has to
Give an undertaking.
do these things as if a tooth is being extracted from an, adolescent. Just put out your stuff here.
Stating that it was a matter of freedom of media, the Supreme Court questioned the rationale behind the Delhi court's order directing Wikipedia to take down a page about the ongoing proceedings of a defamation suit filed by ANI against the platform Thank God. This had set a really wrong precedent. Elon Musk owned X filed a lawsuit against the union government for allegedly using the IT Act to block content on the website. The case has been filed in the Karnataka High Court.
In fact, this is also connected because this whole
Grok thing, which is
it's just so ridiculous.
So the Hindu has an article
very
today,
ridiculous.
that the government has taken note of all the replies that Grok is giving, which is not flattering the government, the BJP or the RSS. But I saw an interesting take by Nikhil Pava, who's editor of Media Nama. He's saying it's basically AI, which is garbage in and garbage out. So Grok looks at Twitter or X for its inputting. So what it gives out can also be problematic. It's not it's
People
rooted in
should
history.
stop getting excited about the fact that
Yeah.
they're taking down the person that I don't like.
Seriously.
A massive pile of cash was recovered from Justice Yashwant Verma's house after a fire broke out and the family called emergency services. TOI reported that it was about 50 crore rupees. Stunning.
No, I think we really don't talk enough about judges.
Because everybody's just scared of contempt.
Yeah, getting money.
Scandalizing the court.
Yeah. And
50 crore, can you imagine?
I was just thinking there was a case in Andhra Pradesh in 2012 to 17 where the one judge came and said that 100 crores was offered to give bail to Gali Janardhan Reddy. And another judge, if I remember his name, Pattabhiram Rao, was suspended. I don't remember actually now whether money was actually found on him, how much was the money, but 100 crore was the sum which was said by another judge. So imagine.
After this incident, CJI Sanjeev Khanna convened a meeting of the collegium where it was unanimously decided to transfer Justice Verma back to Allahabad High Court. Because there he can carry on with his 50 crore cash in the house in Allahabad, not in Delhi.
And before we move on to the next headline, our guest has magically appeared. Welcome, Seema.
Thank you so much.
You're senior editor at The Wire.
Yeah, I'm editor of The Wire.
I see. So, thank you for joining us. We will just get into the discussion. Manisha is finishing the headlines of the week.
On Tuesday, ED raided 8 locations in Bengaluru said to be linked to Open Society Foundation run by George Soros. This is part of its investigation into alleged violations of Foreign Exchange Management Act. ED has also summoned Rashtriya Janata Dal leader and former Bihar Chief Minister Lalu Prasad Yadav, his wife, and son Tej Pratap Yadav for questioning in connection with a money laundering case linked to the alleged land for job scams.
But I will say that Trump picking a former George Soros employee, not just employee, one of George Soros' main economic hitmen as he's chairman of the Fed, will put all the Bhaktjan into a kerfuffle. Now, if Trump has picked him, then
I think Bhakts can just
Bhakts
ignore.
are very clear that this is something that will carry favor and It's a
So-
classic trope.
So that is allowed.
Yeah, but I think they've moved away from George Soros now. It's USAID.
They're busy chasing
Yeah.
the US state.
Yeah.
So, but Soros will never move off target, maybe.
PM Narendra Modi appeared on a 3-hour-long podcast with Lex Fridman. I had no idea about who this guy is, till he interviewed our dear Prime Minister. Modi underlined his similarities with US President Donald Trump, stressed the significance of dialogue over discord with India-China ties. China was very happy to hear this. Lashed out at Pakistan and called for peace in Ukraine. He also spoke about journalists. I don't know if you guys missed that. Journalist कैसा होना चाहिए? मक्खी जैसा या मधुमक्खी जैसा? मक्खी में होता है जर्नलिस्ट जो गंध में बैठ के गंध फैलाता है, और मधुमक्खी होती है जो फूलों में मधु निकाल के प्रसारित करती है. बट अगर डंक मार दे तो आपका मुंह सूज जाता है. Did you understand?
Last part I didn't.
This is
So should you be a honey bee or should you be a house fly?
तो मैंने कहा देखिए भाई, पत्रकारिता कैसी होनी चाहिए? मक्खी जैसी होनी चाहिए कि मधुमक्खी जैसी होनी चाहिए? तो मैंने कहा कि मक्खी जो होती है वो गंध पर बैठती है और गंध ही उठा करके फैलाती है. मधुमक्खी हैं जो फूल पर बैठती हैं और मधु लेकर के मधु प्रसारित करती है. लेकिन कोई गलत करे तो मधुमक्खी ऐसा डंक देती है कि 3 दिन तक आप अपना चेहरा किसी को दिखा नहीं सकते हो.
Housefly sits on shit and spreads it. Honeybee takes out honey, spreads it. But if it stings you, then your face is like...
So I know what the song is going to be today, but this is Modi ji's interpretation of what journalists should be.
What a journalist should be. But after talking so much about gand and housefly, सबसे ज़्यादा गंद जो मचाते हैं, सबसे ज़्यादा interviews तो उनको ही मिलते हैं.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
They're the ones who get the most. But yeah, so Scott Bessent, rich, gay, and likes friend-shoring. Bessent spent part of his career managing money for billionaire George Soros.
अच्छा, this is
His nomination of the highest rank officer of the
I was
economic.
like,
He's the new.
what is
हाँ,
this?
suddenly
Yeah.
I said, what
He's
is
the
he
Treasury Secretary that Trump has picked.
Trump has no problems with people who help George Soros make his money. The problem is with how he's spending it. So I think they very clearly distinguish between the two, like
Exactly.
avatars. Yeah.
In news from the parliament, both houses witnessed disruptions yet again after members of the DMK protested wearing t-shirts with slogans against delimitation. Narendra Modi also spoke in parliament in support of Mahakumbh and likened it to India's historical milestones like the 1857 uprising and the Dandi March. The opposition questioned his silence on the stampede. Meanwhile, the Home Ministry has told the Lok Sabha that the centre did not conduct an inquiry of its own into stampede and does not have any data on the number of dead and injured.
That's
This is the
ridiculous,
Mahakumbh's
man. How can they give this
stampede.
answer, yeah, with a straight face?
Also, how can you compare this to 1857?
Also, how did they get with so
All
much
done.
precision the 66 crore number if they couldn't get the number of dead in the stampede? So, one of the two things is completely out of whack.
Meanwhile, Karnataka Minister K.N. Rajendran claimed that 48 MLAs in the state have been honey-trapped and conceded that there was an attempt to trap him as well. He sought an investigation from the state police into the matter. He said that as per my knowledge, about 48 people have fallen victim to these CDs and pen drives, not just 1 or 2. Please elaborate. Have they fallen victims to pen drives?
I can just say that at any given point of time, any Kannada channel or newspaper will have CDs with them because there are always sex CDs of Karnataka politicians. And someone or the other will keep going to court. There are so many injunctions in court. If you take a list of injunctions from Karnataka courts, it is always politicians taking for CDs. And almost every month, 2 politicians will go to court. Not an exaggeration at all. We have actually recorded this as a story.
So all ministers have a CD of theirs. all the
Mostly, not
netas.
all. Let's not put all, but I think around 50 to 60% surely. Yeah, you're saying 48. This guy is saying 48 MLAs. He's a minister. And he has also named other ministers saying that this man, there's a CD on him,
But-
there's a CD on him.
But when's the last time in India a quote-unquote sex scandal impacted a politician's political prospects?
No, I think the problem here is that now these sex tapes may be consensual. We don't know, right?
Right.
Now, the confusion happened in Karnataka when Prajwal Revanna's
Yeah.
tapes came out. They already seen so many videos that they thought this is also consensual. Because so many CDs are there. It's not even a joke. And if it is consensual, I think, okay, fine. But there are so many cases in the state where it has not been consensual sex, where there have been cases of rape. So when this guy says 48 and everybody's honey trap, we should not just listen to him and believe that. There could be cases of rape and harassment in that.
Yeah, because in Rivanna case, clearly there were videos that were not consensual.
Before also, there have been other ministers who have been caught.
But it
like
has
this.
never impacted anyone's political prospects in our
But
country.
Rivanna,
No,
MJ
there have been
Akbar.
others who have resigned but come
So,
back. They've resigned.
I think
and
when
then
it
come back.
becomes criminal, just the fact of there being a sex kind of a sleazy thing may not impact, but the minute it takes a criminal turn, there are known to be consequences.
I'm not sure if
So-
this is significant enough.
SEBI barred former CNBC Awaaz news anchor Hemant Ghai from participating in the securities market for 5 years for engaging in fraudulent trading practices.
Is he still an anchor or he was an anchor?
No,
as
he
an
was.
ex-anchor?
He
He
was,
was an
He was
anchor.
he was an anchor.
I see. So, but this is, I mean, this is an issue that has been on for so long.
Yeah.
I remember this has been raised in the late 2000s. It was an open secret in many newsrooms when business channels were making, like in the boom years of television news, they were doing it all the time. And what they call front running, right?
Yeah. We have a very good piece on it by Vivek Kaul, in case you guys are interested. US crackdown on students. An Indian researcher at Georgetown University, Badar Khan Suri, was detained by Trump administration for his alleged links to Hamas. However, his deportation order was then barred by district court in Virginia. He's an ex-Jamia student. Meanwhile, another student at Columbia University, Ranjani Srinivasan, self-deported last week, days after their student visa was revoked for allegedly participating in pro-Palestine protests. You've interviewed her.
Yeah, we have interviewed her. Yeah.
And she's a Canadian passport holder.
Yeah, she's now in Canada. And in her case, what she told us is that she's not a leader of the protest. She was participating in a few, but she was not even there when the main protests happened. So other students we spoke to in the university also said that it's surprising why they've chosen her to make an example of, perhaps, and not the others. So maybe it's to tell everyone that even if you are a small participant in it, you can be picked out. But she's getting a lot of hate from the right wing here also.
That's the sad part. Not
Yeah.
like when they come back, they'll find support here.
In fact,
They
I
will
want
be,
to
yes, good, serves them right.
discuss this briefly also in this.
2 weeks before his reciprocal tariffs on India deadline, Donald Trump said that he believes India will likely reduce tariffs that it imposes on American goods. So he said that I'm going to probably go with the tariffs, but it seems like they've lowered.
But I mean, one has.
But then we said that no, we have not done anything yet.
Not yet. But I think we must admit that for whatever the reasons that, at least from what Western media I'm consuming, Trump has a personal, genuine attraction towards quote unquote strong men. So he deals with them differently than he deals with people who doesn't think are strong men. The way he approaches India, even if he's going to impose tariffs, the disrespect with which he talks about Canada or even close allies, whereas he's also saying that he'll increase tariffs, but he says it in a way that it's very unfair. We will charge them what they charge us. So although I love India, we have a great relationship.
Yeah, he's a
He
tough
doesn't
negotiator.
deal with India. He doesn't talk about India the way he talks about others. Now, I don't know whether that's a foreign policy win or what.
I don't think it is, because I think what really would worry Mr. Modi is that he wants to divide up the world between Xi, Putin and himself. India doesn't quite figure there. So India can go on speaking what it does, and you're right that they've also, the reporting has been a little kind of sandpapered here. Trump has been very rude, forthright, and said, I'm not doing anything about 2nd of April. And even when other countries are sticking it to Trump and saying what they may suffer more than America does, but they're saying their piece, India hasn't said a damn after the shackling. They've been so remarkably timid, or even about tariffs. And, instead you have Piyush Goyal saying that the protectionist mindset.
Oh, yeah, that
what
is-
about Make in India? What about Make India Great Again?
I mean, I don't understand what Piyush Goyal says. I think he just payloads.
Just rubbish. And he's a lead negotiator. So he's going to decide whether Walmart is going to kick out all the mom and pop stores. And what's this with the Starlink deal as well? So it's all very shady. And earlier, remember, journalists could be arrested for having a satellite phone. So India is very touchy about its sat phone, sat waves.
And I think it is a genuine
Yeah, it's a
national
genuine
security
concern.
concern.
Yeah.
But this whole alignment with US companies today, it's reported that Tata will probably be getting into some sort of arrangement with Tesla.
Yes.
I don't know what
So,
the
yeah,
details will be, but
yeah.
that may be
And there's
happening.
some news also that all households can have only 2 cars, which are petrol or diesel, fossil fuels. The third will have to be an EV. So are we creating the ground for, and even in this, I don't know if you'll probably discuss that, the Grok matter, which
Yeah,
has enraged
we
them.
did.
They're saying they're going to go after questioners because they daren't say anything because this is Musk's AI.
Yeah, and
They
Musk
went
has
after
anyway
Google.
gone to court against
Yeah.
them. So days after Israel resumed its airstrikes and killed about 500 people in Gaza, Hamas fired retaliatory rockets at Tel Aviv. Israel on Tuesday resumed its attack on Gaza. As per a BBC report, about 170 children in Gaza have died.
Yeah,
It's one of the
horrible.
worst
It's
strikes,
just nuts.
actually.
And I think it's one hell of a coincidence that Netanyahu resumed this full-out bombing
Yeah.
Exactly a day after that judge, you saw how he spoke to Netanyahu, right?
Yeah.
He says, lower your voice here. I mean, Netanyahu was, and he's not used to being spoken to like that. And I guess he figured that, dude, if it goes out there and I get even weaker, and the day after that, he resumed his bombing. I think it's very transparent for him. Keeping this war going is a question of political survival.
Imagine.
That's the headlines?
So many people, yeah.
Anything else? Okay. So I want to once again remind everybody, please scan this QR code, pay to keep news free, buy a joint Newslaundry News Minute subscription. You can also contribute to The Wire. You can go to the website and I'm sure there's a live link there.
There is.
And support our journalism before Dhanya goes back. Otherwise, she'll say there's no point appearing on your Hafta podcast. You're wasting my time. Hai na?
Also, we're going to co-publish a few interesting stories and investigations.
Oh, right. By the time this
Yes.
Hafta goes out, there may be a big story out there.
Not this Hafta, by next Hafta.
By next Hafta, okay.
Yeah.
By next Hafta, it'll be out there. It's
Bombshell
a
of a
bombshell
story.
of a story. Watch out for that one. So before we discuss, I want to discuss, language media, its impact versus English media, its impact. And I want to discuss, what happened in Nagpur.
No, we want to discuss the university.
The university issue as well.
Deportation of.
So,
students.
okay, then let's actually start with that and then we'll come to the language media. Because what I want to start off with is kind of related to that. I don't remember, Manisha, several years ago, we'd had a discussion here on Hafta. And I think it was triggered by something I had said at some panel. That patriotism is a slightly primitive concept. And
Nationalism or patriotism?
patriotism. Because it is about values. Patriotism is love for your country. Whereas your country may be pursuing values based on whichever is the government in power at the time. And that value system may not, align with your value system. So you will talk against that value system. And strictly speaking, that is unpatriotic. But it is just how, we are. And I think Anand made some fantastic points that as long as the concept of boundaries exist, the national state is the way the world is structured. And there is no alternative to it right now. And he was right. It is, whether it's visas, whether it's no matter how liberal these even Scandinavian countries get, they to give you the visa for 6 days. So you have to attend this. 21st, your event gets over. 21st night, take a flight back. They don't even want you to stay one extra day. So the nation state as a concept is the defining framework of the world right now. So patriotism is
Natural
inherent.
outcome.
But now with this, the many right-wing in India, celebrating an Indian student being kicked out of America is unpatriotic because you're backing a foreign power treating your citizen badly, but your value aligns with Trump's value. So I think the world has come around to that.
Globalized.
It's basically what we discussed 5-6 years ago. And as usual, the writing always comes to, the realization things a few years later, if not decades later. That is the overwhelming system with which people will choose their side. Patriotism is out. Trump can treat left-wing or liberal Indians like shit, and this government and the right-wing ecosystem will celebrate it, but that's not patriotic. So in that context about, these foreign students being asked to go, and when I had gone for a conference to UK a few years ago, many students and academics had come up to me, and we couldn't pursue that story because none of them was willing to give evidence, said that we get direct threats when we participate in protests from the High Commission. There are people there with video, and they say, this is where we're from and we're watching you, and are you an OCI card holder or not? So they were scared too. And Trump is doing exactly that 4 years later. So I think Trump is actually following the footsteps of Modi. And what happened in these two specific cases, I think you've interviewed one. So Manisha and Dhanya can just tell us about that. And in that context, where does that leave free speech the world over?
So Ranjani Srinivasan is actually, she's based out of Canada, but she was studying in Colombia. They did reach out to us for the interview because
Columbia University, people shouldn't confuse that. She wasn't in the country Columbia, she was Columbia University in New York.
Yeah. So, and also imagine for an Indian like Ranjani to speak to Indian media, she has to be very wary of who she speaks to because she doesn't know how it is going to be portrayed and how it is going to be put out. By then, I think the Times of India said Hamas supporter thrown out, and because that's what the American said, right?
Yeah.
She's a Hamas supporter without any proof. It's just a statement with 2 lines, that's all. By then, the Indian newspapers have already branded her Hamas supporter. So she spoke to the Hindu and then she spoke to us. So quite a tricky situation where you don't know if you're going to get support from the Indian government. So they are trying to look if the Tamil Nadu government will give any support, as in at least speak on their behalf, because she's from Chennai, right? And I doubt that too, in the sense that any Tamil Nadu politician who wants to go to US and has to get a visa may also be a bit skeptical about supporting her, right? But I think that's what they're trying. They don't think the Indian government is going to support them, and I feel that this is not this will not be the final one. There will be other Indian students who will be marked, and I have a friend who was a student in Germany. He was saying that they have been strictly told now not to even like retweet stuff which is pro-Palestine, because even from there they could be deported. So everywhere this fear is there within the student community that something is going to happen. And even in Colombia, like I know a lot of Indian students there. For so many months, they've been anticipating this action and they've been sort of, getting legal help. And imagine as students have gone there to study for 1 or 2 years, you have participated in protests because you have to, and you feel that then you have to lend your voice to protest, right? Yeah. I mean, the first reaction, of course, of people who are fence sitters are, why do students protest? I saw this really bizarre story on News 18 saying, who is Ranjani Srinivasan? Why do we know so little about her? Why should you know about every student in every university, man? And then it writes about why is she a PhD scholar I think she's in her 30s, because they have never heard of the concept of people studying and taking jobs and going back to study and all. That is a concept alien to them. And okay, why are students doing politics? Why can't they just sit quietly? Why do they talk about this?
The quality of columnists at Network 18 and First Post is, oh dear God, it is just so, it's like adolescent angst-ridden essays.
I think it's kind of deliberately done to kind of promote and push this narrative, create this alternative. Please be a worker and be a cog in some Reliance factory or place as ever. I mean, who runs the place? This whole vast network of media is not a coincidence. And now that they've also bought Disney, etc., please get ready for OTTs which spread the same kind of a message.
The Washington Post had done that story.
So, you'll soon see a lot of that. And in all their stories, there is this sting that runs through that, which has all these questions latent. Why you like?
No, so because Ranjani insisted that, she was not a huge part of the protest. She's not saying she didn't protest, but she was not a leader. After the interviews with, I think she first spoke to New York Times and then the other 2 interviews came. There's this website called a pamphlet. I don't know what it is. It's some right-wing fact-check website, they call it. They have said, no, she was participating in protests, and they've put a video of another Indian student or maybe some Asian student doing sloganeering against Israel and all that. Not that anything is wrong with that, but it's not even Ranjani. And they're like, we are fact-checking. Look at how Ranjani is shouting slogans. And that's become viral now. Everybody's putting that video saying that, see, she was fomenting trouble in US. So it's the Indian media, both mainstream, a section of it, and this YouTube fellows who are actually creating more trouble for her, I feel.
In fact, every time I'm asked about the shift in Indian media, to me, the defining period is the 2016 JNU sedition case. That was when the media really kind of, there was propaganda, pro-Modi stuff, but it completely turned against people. The kind of things, the call to arrest Umar Khalid was made on television news. The call to kind of crack down on what's happening in our universities. Why aren't they studying? Why aren't they, they're misusing our taxpayers' money? Why are these 30-year-olds in universities? So that kind of thing we've seen from 2016 and only escalate to the point that who was that young girl in Bangalore who was also arrested under sedition charges? Disha Ravi. So India has had the most repressive policy towards protest on Palestinians. We have not allowed any protest in campuses.
Even in Congress states.
Yes.
Like in Bangalore, I think just now, 2 days ago, a case has been filed by a group of lawyers because everywhere they went to protest for Palestine, they were detained. They were not allowed even in Freedom Park. Now, in Bangalore, it's very strange. You can only protest in Freedom Park. Ironically, it's called Freedom Park. You cannot protest anywhere else in the city.
Even in Delhi, it says Jantar Mantar used to be. Now even that is...
So, it's a new thing in Bangalore. So, they have now filed a case saying that why can't we protest for Palestine? So, they are not allowing it.
In a week where 170 children have died. And in India, I had come to accept this, that now, especially if a Jamia is involved in a protest or if an AMU, students group decides to protest for Palestine, immediately you'll have news channels pick it up and say, look, Hamas supporters, they are supporting terrorists. But I didn't think that this would happen in American universities, because that's the
Yeah.
standard you would look at, that you could, whatever the problems may be in the US, in these campuses. And this was a very fraught kind of emotional issue there, way more than in India, because even the left-wing activists there were quite aggressive with what they were doing and sometimes obnoxious in how they were behaving. But there was this freedom to kind of say your piece. For that to go away in the American universities has been quite something to see.
And the chilling effect is real
Yeah.
with people who want visas to go
Of course.
somewhere, because now US though has said, now we'll check your social media. If you're
You know, we
critical
did
of
that
Trump,
with a French
people who
scholar.
who are critical of Trump now can be actually, removed from the job.
French scholar was not allowed to go in because they took his phone and they checked his social media, or not even social media, some message to someone on probably private social media, WhatsApp or something. And it was saying something like, what is Trump up to and all. They sent him back. So you're conflating what you said about patriotism. I mean, plenty to unpack there, important points, that when you confuse government with country, so there's government country values, and you completely directly make it, if you don't say long live the king, you're dead.
So the reason for the nation state to exist is more economic. But when it comes to what you support, or whether you have, whether you endorse what your country does, I think the whole patriotism in that sense
But I
is
wouldn't
gone.
call
Sorry, Manisha, but I just want to accept that even the hardcore right-wing voices that today have become ugly, and they have shared, the Hafta table with us in the past, I will say they've been consistent on one thing in Salva Judum, and I think the liberal side has also been consistent on that. No matter how much they say that, the liberals used to kiss up to the Congress, how the liberals opposed Salva Judum. But even the Bhaktjan, at that time I remember, they supported the Salva Judum, although it was a Congress project. So on this whole, crackdown on people speaking up, I think the right wing had been consistent, at least in India.
Yeah. No, I just want to add.
No,
because-
don't you think?
No, we were speaking about the
I
media.
remember this one used to support Salva Judum, this Open India buffoon who used to be with us on that Cleaners show. And today he's a Modi Bhakt. Salva Judum was okay
There's
to
so
them.
many buffoons. I don't know which one. But I just want to say about the media thing. I was reading this story in the Hindustan Times from 2018. It's like a feature story on this couple. The man is from Delhi, the woman is from Gaza, and how they had a baby and they were choosing between Gandhi and Arafat, and they named the baby Arafat. This is the same Badar Khan who's now... the US court has now stopped his deportation, but the US wants to deport him for supporting Palestine. At that time, the English media during their wedding and all that had romanticized it because there's a woman from Gaza, a man from India. Now
Look how things change.
Now how would they be reporting it?
Actually, what you mentioned, just jumping, but within the syllabus, what you said about 2016 JNU being a signature thing, we must not forget the role of the media in even possibly inserting the slogan.
Z News.
Z News
Very much did
pushed
it.
the slogan. So we don't even know if it was that kind of...
Sorry, what slogan?
There was this whole anti-India slogan allegedly
Right,
by that
right, right.
crowd,
Of
which
course,
triggered
yes.
everything. What is sedition resting on? It's resting on possibly doctored tapes put out by media. So that's why it's not about kowtowing to Modi or being a follower. You're front runners carrying the flaming propaganda torch ahead to set places
Way
on
ahead of
fire.
the government
way ahead of
sometimes.
government. So this is at
So,
another
like,
order. And you're right,
Arrest Umar
2016
Khalid
is-
happened way before anyone figured. I think
You
Home Ministry
actually-
later on
yes,
woke up
and
to
you're-
Umar Khalid.
People are being beaten up on sets. You're organizing all that with a view. And the kind of people you go to when you want Mr. Modi criticized. I mean, that's clearly there. That if you're going to position a dadi, topi, so it's only a Hindu-Muslim framing. And of course, sheer hate. I saw a tweet put out by a very senior woman anchor whom you named continuously. We used to know her well. And she asked for videos on Holi ka pata nahi kya or Ramzan ki diwar. Make videos on this and send it to us.
But, did Sudhir ever talk about these PhD scholars wasting taxpayers' money and all?
Yeah.
But now he's the one who wants
But
to
the-
set up his whole production house on taxpayers' money. The whole, that, which now India has
Not
also
just that,
reported.
he's done a whole show on why do these young people want sarkari jobs. Why don't they do something with their lives? Why can't they be entrepreneurs?
Why
Like, chalo,
is
So
he
at
getting-
least someone got
why
a
do you want
sarkari
the
job.
Sarkari channel to pay your production house to do this 15
I'm
crore?
sorry, not
go to
Sarkari,
private-
it's your and my money.
So
This is
that's
public
Sarkari,
money.
public
What
money.
Sarkari?
So
Mera
after
paisa.
all those lectures,
I was
now
like,
he
किसी को तो
wants...
सरकारी नौकरी मिल गई
So the-
और किसी को मिले ना मिले. But on the patriot thing, I just wanted to chip in. I consider myself a huge patriot to the point that sometimes I'm very petty also, in the sense that I'm happy to criticize India, but if a foreigner criticizes India, I get very like defensive. I'll downplay even things that I rant about. I'll be like, no, but it's not like that in India. So I think I don't consider right wing. What does it rest on patriotism? It is just an exclusion of a certain people. That's it. There's no love for your country. There's no genuine desire to see your country progress. How much of the right wing talking point is about where can India go ahead? Just look at the conversations around these patriotic channels this week. It's just Aurangzeb, 17th century. How many of them actually really are invested in wanting your country to grow ahead? I would feel like the Chinese are probably more patriotic about their country than...
Talking of China, all these Harvard grads and all are now joining Chinese AI startups. Look at where China is. They've made a 6th-generation fighter jet. India's
They have
struggling
a
to make the
global
4th.
CEO summit
Yeah,
next week.
We
where
are doing a
the top
Dandiya
executives are
something.
coming.
We are doing some 75,000 girls have. It's the Dainik Bhaskar back page story. And there's a 111-foot-long bansuri, etc. You're stuck there. And this is actually a goodish side. Nothing wrong with a 111-meter bansuri. But you're going after like people doing all this Aurangzeb nonsense. What are we talking about? In 11 years, where's China? Where's
Yeah,
us?
but
That's
to your
like,
point,
so
Manisha, the
patriotism-
feeling of love, devotion, and sense of attachment to country or state is how patriotism is defined. In that
Yeah,
context.
so,
yeah.
but,
So
but
I
that
think
doesn't mean I
distinct,
have
she's
to
right.
go
She's-
with whichever government is in power.
it's a love for country, people, rather than blind
But then
devotion.
who you love, you also question them a lot. So I think questioning is very much part. If you love your country, you are going to question where it's going, what is it thinking, what are the top leaders doing.
And I
don't
want
think
the lives
love
of fellow country
is-
persons to be better. I think that's the essence of patriotism.
Exactly, wanting to see
Rather
other
than, you
people-
know, that Virat Kohli will be hated if he loses this
No, but-
match.
But when you say love
It's
for
become
country,
that.
what is love for country?
What are
Like,
you
what does
loving
that mean?
exactly?
What exactly? What are you loving?
What are you
What
loving?
is
my
it?
people, my geography,
No,
my
which is your people?
culture.
What
So
is-
your people.
You.
No, but even the
The buffoon he
BJP and the
mentioned.
RS is also our people, right? So I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
so you-
I do love them.
To someone who's an outsider,
So
let's say a
Sabir will
foreigner
summarize
comes, you will
someone-
support,
No, I don't. You don't have to love each and every person in the
no, but
country to
as a
love your country.
collective,
But there's an idea, a certain sense of geography, obviously, to your country, that I have a conception of a north, a south, a coastline, a Himalayas. So, of course, it exists within a framework. A special love for people who reside within this geography, which is, you can say it's silly
It's
because
the way
just somebody
we
just drew
condition
a
after the
line and...
Westphalian
no, of
state.
course, I'm
actually,
not
you're
judging whether
right.
it's silly or not, but I'm
No,
just trying to
It is a
understand.
limiting thing. You're absolutely
It's
right.
limiting,
in a
like,
very,
for sure.
you know,
It is,
we should love humanity, and therefore, you know, Vasudev Kutumbakam has been so dumbed down now. It's a beautiful sentiment when you're saying the world's my family, which passports actually militate against, and all these people who have to take American or European passports have to pledge by the flag, na, and say we will not
Yeah.
be loyal to any other country, only
yeah.
loyalties to US
Correct.
or whatever. So you're right. It's ultimately limiting, but even in that limited framework, there's a way of being civilized about it
Yeah.
and loving your country, but not being exclusivist and being
But I'm saying...
moronic.
But love for your country need not mean that you have to support the government, is what my point is.
Sure,
That
but-
you don't have to go with what the government of the day wants you to do or wants...
No, but
Country is not government. Country
Yeah,
does
no,
not
that
equal.
That
we've
conflict
established.
is already
Yeah,
happened
but
in India.
No, but I'm just saying, of course, Seema and Manisha have really made my utterances very polite because they are politer than me. I did not use the word limiting. I said it's primitive. So it is, I think, a primitive concept. And again, you know, just the way I look at it, what do I, you know, what gives you goosebumps? Like when I hear that song of Bapu, Deti Hame Azadi Bina Khadak Bina Dhal.
Damn good.
I feel really good.
Yeah.
I get goose flesh
Tearful,
that, you know,
yeah.
that because for me, I'm proud of Bapu. So I think history is a part of what I love. I don't fucking love the people. I think when I go out, they frustrate me every day. They can't stand in line. They fucking spit.
Yeah.
So I have no love for the people. And again, I don't think you have to love even
That's true.
that humanity. I don't think you have to love humanity. Fuck humanity. If you don't like humanity, you have to align to a certain value system. And that value system you align to no matter where on the globe it exists. For example, I think Che. Again, I can get into another discussion whether Che was a good person or a bad person, and he was grey like many others, and many morons who haven't read anything about him have very extreme views on him. But he believed in a value system. Now, he fought for a country that was not his. Then he went and fought for another country that was not his because he believed in that value system. So I think he was a front runner in what patriotism means in that sense. So I don't think you have to love anyone or anything. You have to just align yourself with the value system, and that's what we do. And at least for me, why I'm not proud of being Indian, but I am proud of certain things that India has contributed. And in that, I think there are certain poems, certain people, certain songs that really make you feel that, yeah, I'm from this cultural heritage. But my value system has nothing to do with that. So which is why I think if any regular person who is out there saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai were to sit and think, what do I love and what am I actually endorsing, they would really rethink what patriotism means to them.
No, but I think again you're saying that values are fixed.
No, they could be fluid.
I could be a person who loves my country and I want certain values, to take center stage in my country, and I fight for that. So it's not that India stands for values and now I'll stand behind those values. They may not have, like for caste, for example. Repeatedly we're frustrated with the fact of why are we so casteist? Why can't we get over this? Cleanliness, to make it even simpler. Doesn't mean I'm going to stand behind India because those values exist, but I want those values to be better. So it's a desire to see your country
you have
do
to
better.
give Manisha and me a little gate pass on this, because say India in 1950.
Who am I, madam?
No, you know what I mean. No, while we're speaking on this,
thinker.
yeah. Because see, India stood up our constitution in 1950, which is what these people, the so-called trolls and all the so-called trads, whatever, are up against. So there's an alignment of value in place. So if India tomorrow decides to scrap its constitution and say we will only worship people who wear a certain color and the rest of you, I don't know if my love, my patriotism would transcend into love for those people. So that's where you're right. Part of my love from India comes from the fact that Nagaland, Kerala and all came not to become Hindi-speaking Hindus. They came because there was a common pledge to security, to social justice, to equality, the right to freedom. So we'll all do better together, not because we're the same. That's why the whole, I think, idea of Indian nationhood is very different from the nationalism. That's why, the Hindu right wants to call itself in Hindu nationalists, because it gives them a credibility which they never had. They don't stand behind this India. They didn't embrace the tricolor.
Sure.
So I think that's where we have there is an alignment of value and the India that we live in today.
No.
If that was to be scrapped, I don't know
to
if
push your country towards those values.
Correct.
It's not just
and there's a special duty I feel I have to work towards it rather than push Pakistan towards those values.
So
to be very honest, all the Burmese, also for that matter.
All the other controversies going on now, right? Like delimitation or Hindi imposition. It all comes from this very concept of what is idea of India. For example, there is a section of people who are saying that do not impose or homogenize. What is your thought of India on us? We are. I was reading these speeches from the Constituent Assembly where the Tamil MPs have, for example, said that, do I become patriotic only because when I speak Hindi? For example, did you ask me when you were making a nation? I was here with you because I was patriotic, right? Anna has said this in Parliament. So the point is, when you're challenging that notion that you have to behave in a certain way, your values have to align with me, otherwise you're not patriotic. I think that is a problem that we're facing here, that there's a doubt in people's mind that, okay, if I do not align with that, then am I against India? Because we've already conflated what is government and what is nation. People are not able to see the difference. A lot of people are not able to see the difference. And because we're talking about international students and values, I am very shocked that the right wing, for example, is very happy Ranjani has been forced to self-deport simply because she stood for her values, right? And we are like, oh, the moment you leave your country, you cannot have those values. You just have to be a student and be in that box that they give you. Now they are not okay with people protesting here also. You can't have those values here also because the government of this day has changed its policy. So I feel like...
But I think the celebration of the right wing is at least something very base. It's just that hum danda maar rahe the, ab America mein bhi danda pada hai, wah. We were always... It's just that. There's nothing to do with patriotism
But
or
what I think what he's saying
nationalism or
is that
nothing.
there is a kind of they feel that value alignment, and we are actually maybe 40 years on and people will record these times. The kind of 30s moment is upon us now, that you have this alignment. So actually, Mr. Trump's USA will be very hostile to Indians, but India welcomes that shift.
Yeah.
Because that fundamental, they sense the oneness that we will patronize the white American, whatever, the WASP. You do the Hindu thing, no problem.
I think,
And with Hungary, they recognize their lot. So we're actually in that moment.
I think the mindset that actually
The majoritarian.
determines this interpretation of the world order is similar to how mafia divides up territories. That boss, South Bombay is yours. Chota Shakil says, this is yours. Do what the fuck you want to the people. You want to beat them up. You want to carry out. But don't come here. So I think that is the kind of mindset that determines, okay, you want to beat up.
That's a Ukraine,
you want to beat up
model.
minorities there. Yeah. Go ahead. You do yours. We'll do ours. And if that means, our people are beaten up, fine. But there is no alignment of values in a broader sense. It is just
deeper value, if you want to call it that, of prejudice, bigotry. You recognize the other bigot.
No, power at any cost. No,
yes, power at any cost. No, and power on those terms.
Yeah,
Not power because you're an Obama or you're an FDR. Power because you behave like Andrew Jackson and worse. Chalega. Because that allows us to do our number here. We can
I was wondering today, Trump has actually given an executive order to disband the Department of Education.
Which actually is illegal because Congress has to.
The point is, and I was reading about it, that apparently 90% of education in the US is with the states.
Yeah.
So the 10% also he is now going to give away to the states. There's no federal control over education anymore. So I was wondering, will Modi ji do that now? Because if you believe in the same value system, take away education from concurrent list. No, give it to the states. So I'm like, it's also about choice. You don't want to do certain things that they do, but you align on basic things like bigotry, patriarchy, and whatever, free market or whatever you call it. Yeah.
So I would like to move on to the next subject I want to discuss with our wonderful esteemed panel. But before that, I want to remind everybody, here's a QR code again. Pay to keep news free. Support the News Minute, the Newslaundry project on police atrocities. I think we've already done a couple of stories on this, Manisha, if I'm not wrong. They've gone out.
Yeah. We've done the stories on Hindutva.
Right. But on this one, work has started. They haven't been published yet. So do contribute. The last I checked, we aren't even 50% up to the amount that we need to actually fund these stories. You have to make sure journalists and producers are comfortable so that they can do their jobs well. And that should be done by you willingly, not through Sarkari ads or Doordarshan money without your consent, like is being done for certain prominent news personalities. Now, I want to start off this with our guest from the South, and we were discussing this morning before we started recording. And there's something that we've touched upon very briefly on Hafta or other podcasts and panels as well. And in fact, I make this point whenever I'm asked this, especially on international panels, tell us about Indian media. And I always first say, I can tell you about the Hindi and the English media, news media. I cannot tell you about Indian media because it's very fragmented. So the question I want to throw to the panel here is, the English news media has less than 2% of viewership and readership across the country. There are many language medias like Tamil, Malayalam, Marathi media, which have a larger audience, often as much, and many times in few instances larger audience. Yet what English media does has an outsized influence on whether it is policy, on whether it is narrative setting, on whether it is the attack that happens on us. Like Newslaundry's traffic would probably be less than many Tamil and Marathi sites. But yet when we do a story, we get threats, whether it's directly or indirectly or through text raids, etc. When Arnab does a shouting match, he has a fraction of the viewership in India. So in sheer numbers, it is less, especially compared to South media, which is very robust. Why do you think that is? Because if it's just electoral politics, our readership is much smaller in sheer numbers. Why does English media have an outsized influence on narrative setting, policy, politics, and general? Dhanya, why do you think? Because you speak, she was boasting to me, I know Turkish, I know Malayalam, I know Hindi, I said you don't know Hindi. I know Tamil. She named me 7 languages.
नहीं मैं ये उत्तर में हिंदी में देती हूँ, ठीक है?
Can I before this, can I explain to people how she knows Turkish?
Yes.
This is the most ridiculous thing I've heard.
What?
She loves watching Turkish serials, and she watches a serial, she watches it again and again and again, so she just learns the dialogues.
No, and then I switch off the subtitles, so I know the...
she switches off the subtitles and she re-watches it, so she knows what they're saying, so she thinks she knows Turkish.
I do know. Okay, तो मैं हिंदी में बात करती हूँ, ठीक है?
No, people get upset if we talk in Hindi because we have a separate Hindi podcast.
That's the only reason why. Otherwise, I would have answered this in Hindi. Okay, so why? I don't know. See, I have always wondered this. For example, I was telling Abhinandan that when the Kerala floods happened, no, actually not the Kerala floods, the Chennai floods happened. I think 2010. No, sorry, 2015. The Chennai floods. The English media was sleeping on it for the first 1.5 days, and people were desperately tweeting saying that, please start covering. And I was wondering, why are we telling them to cover? Because Tamil media is covering it. That time online proliferation was not this high, 2015, right?
So it was being covered in Tamil media robustly.
Robustly.
Okay.
But everybody's saying English media, why are you not covering? And I asked myself, why are we asking English media to cover it? Perhaps because people in Delhi who are supposed to even send money and help the state are watching it in English or in Hindi. That is the reason why we want the Delhi. I'm now starting to call it Delhi media and not national media anymore.
Noida media, also you can say. NCR media.
Whatever. Delhi
NCR
media is fine for me. So that's why Delhi media is covered. One is economics.
Okay.
And the second is policy. I mean, we assume that people who make policy, law, etc. are sitting and watching English channels or Hindi channels. I don't know if they watch Hindi channels. And that's the reason why people want to place their stories on an English channel, right? I don't see any other utility of it. In fact, because I worked on in a TV channel for around 8 years, I can now see the dangers of even placing it on a TV channel in English. Like, for example, a few years ago, there was a protest in Bengaluru where they had blackened the metro signs because it had only English and Hindi. And they said, why not in Kannada? And I remember I was working for an English channel, so my coverage was like, Kannada activists go rogue and why are they doing this violence? But today I understand the positioning of that story was so wrong. It was, that fight was against the imposition of a language, right? And I feel that the way even these stories, which are very state specific, how they're projected in national media, I don't think it's of any use. So now I have stopped insisting that English media should cover. I'm actually very happy if they don't cover it.
So what you're saying is it's the economics, because whether it's aid, whether it is, the people who will actually contribute are largely English speaking.
We assume.
So, but that is why. Seema, you have an insight into the media, probably more than anyone else at this table because of
you
your
guys do a great job
sheer
on
experience.
understanding media. But
I remember back in the day, I don't know what the circulation numbers are now, but at print, not print as in the website, but print as the
Newspaper.
format, newspapers peak. I think the Indian Express, well, maybe not at its peak, but there was a certain time in the late 2000s when I was talking to someone. They said the Indian Express's circulation was 11 lakh or 14 lakh or something. And the Times of India circulation was, of course, in several times that. And someone from the Express said that I may have a fraction of the coverage, but my newspaper can make and break policy because every policymaker reads my
All the
newspaper.
important people read
so
my-
there's one of that.
Is it that?
I think partly economics are absolutely right with this conception of the readership. Secondly, some people everywhere read English. So your ability to go pan-national and to be global is critical. It's understood easily. And English does the big narrative setting. And also for historical reasons of who has wealth, where is the caste, who has more space on social media, that has only amplified the importance and necessity of English. So I think English does that job. It's almost shorthand for the elite. And I mean elite in a good sense too. That ye padhe likhe hain. This person's well-read because he's speaking in English. He'll probably know one more Indian language, which is okay, which is limiting in terms of geography. This will make it big. So I think that way English is almost shorthand for a lot of things that speak for what the big guys think. So Mr. Modi is writing op-eds in English newspapers. Why should he have to do that? He's got the electoral game covered. If Hindi is completely under, you guys know what the Hindi papers and all and what they do. But over and above that, he has to have a voice in English media because till that happens, it doesn't kind of go well. When you look at even the Gujarat violence of 2002, the Gujarati media was very clearly on his side. It's the chief minister of Gujarat. But the English media could queer the pitch completely because it's kind of pan-national. It's economic basis, it's caste basis, also assumed things that you add on English knowing people. And also the fact that if it's in The Economist or in English media in India, it'll be read internationally. And
Yeah, the
that's like
international part is
is
very
very, very
How does the
important.
world understand you?
How does the world
They'll
understand you?
through your
Somebody
English
in Columbia
newspapers.
University, I mean, this is the pre-kind of Trumpian kind of a phase, will like read about you. Somebody in VDM is accessing that news quickly, easily. So I think that's why government is very clear. It's setting up all these committees to try and game indices and all, so that English media should not run all this. And that's the power of English
So
media.
at least in the past decade, Manisha, you've been observing this and scrutinizing this and interrogating the media, more closely than anyone else. Do you think that responsibility is understood by them, or that privilege? It's not just responsibility. At least the English primetime debates use that as a privilege, and they just shout any shit, whether it is a primetime, debate on Ori. Like, why is that even a thing? Like, there are other stuff to debate. Or do you think there's another reason? And does that still hold, or is it diminishing?
But I think we have to make a distinction. I think English newspapers have quite an outsized influence, but not English news channels anymore. Hindi news channels are way more important in setting the narrative, even making the government a little uncomfortable, because Hindi is consumed by way more people, and especially electorally, it matters more. So English channels can do whatever they want, but if an Aaj Tak shows a Kumbh stampede, that's serious trouble for the government, and they would want to kind of fix that. So I think in terms of narrative setting, English newspapers are still more important because the bureaucrats are reading it, your judges are reading it, everyone in Delhi who's important, the Lutyens elite is reading it, and that kind of shapes their understanding of what to do or what the criticism is. But news channels, I don't think English news channels have any kind of say or influence. Hindi news channels have a way more outsized influence. Increasingly, I've also noticed, since we've been traveling across India for elections 2022 onwards, a lot of, and you can see this in closer to the election, at least 1 month towards the election, most politicians today prefer giving interviews to YouTube channels than even bigger media organizations, because the numbers are there. So the influence, when you want to actually reach out to people, make a difference, or
For
impact
votes.
your election,
Then you reach
It's
out to local language.
to the point that sometimes we meet politicians like who may know of Newslaundry, state leaders who like our work, but they are very like, your audience, our elector, people are going to vote for us, don't watch you. So we
we
have
don't
to
want to
really
talk.
run after them that please give us an interview. They are focusing on the local YouTubers, on the local channels, and they'll make the English guys,
So is that a good
even
thing?
from Delhi,
Is
run.
that a
So
good
are you
thing?
saying an English channel does not have enough influence now on policy or bureaucrats or politicians? I mean, I understand that during elections, to get their word across, they will use YouTube and etc. But I'm saying generally, for example, if
Like,
it's in
do
a
you think-
policy and they report
Who is
something.
the most watched English channel right now? In
It's
terms
so
of
hard to say, man. The
TRPs,
numbers are
News
just
18,
all
but
over.
I don't think anyone's watching CNN News 18, even I'm in the policy circles. Even politicians actually, even within the government, often they're very unaware of what these anchors
But that's
are doing.
because they've made themselves irrelevant from a time when
Yeah.
majority of the commentary there or the debates were by politicians of consequence. Now the commentary there is by either the real chappus of the party, jaake tum lado, ladai jhagda karo, or it is the babas and babis and panditjis and whatever it is. So the people who are there
Yeah.
are also of no consequence
So
now.
one change that we've noticed within the last few years only, I remember when India's Daughter was going to be aired, NDTV had decided that it's going to show India's Daughter, which was a documentary on the December 16 gang rape case. Arnab did this whole thing on Times Now, ban it, how can you do it, it's an insult to India. And the next day, Rajnath reacted and said, we're banning the film. So that was kind of an outsized impact, but I don't think Arnab can have that today.
I want to know, was that an impact, or was Times Now asked to do that because they wanted to ban it?
could be
to
either
create
ways.
Could be
opinion?
either
So we
ways.
don't know
Yeah.
that.
No. The call for ban proceeded.
But what he's saying is we
Precisely.
don't know if it is
We don't
choreographed.
know. Okay.
It could
You're
be
doing that
choreographed.
scene setting.
Yeah.
No,
before.
I know there's
Scene setting before.
So
choreography to
maybe,
hoti hai. I mean,
maybe.
I do
And
think
one day, so it makes
But
you
I think
suspicious.
Rajnath, to me, seemed pretty clueless when he before this. I mean, it was not a controversy.
It could be
Times
that
Now
your
made it a
supporters
controversy.
wanted bans. So you do a lot of things. Like this a business on Grok is because their supporters want the government to do something. So doing something so silly as going after questioners, that who's prompting Grok? You can't tell Musk anything. You have to satisfy your people who are saying, what's going on? So you do the questioners. There is this concept in social media. There is Cory Doctorow, is this Canadian dude. I'm sure you know of him. He's a scholar. He studies kind of information information and political science and all that, he's come up with this wonderful concept called enshittification. Enshittification he speaks of vis-a-vis social media networks and big platforms, which first start great, then in the quest for money, etc., they just dump crap on themselves. So they actually enshit and it dies out. So how Facebook has also does not have that kind of it has like it's like the internet for a lot of people, but it doesn't have that outline
Yeah.
because it is dumb. It's I think that I'm hoping it does apply to English news channels to a point that they've just rendered themselves so spectacularly out of they've just gone off.
But papers still have an influence. Like, for
Papers
example,
do.
when an
Papers
Indian
are still
Express,
dressing up their propaganda more clear.
like when
more
an
cleverly.
Indian Express does a story on raids on opposition politicians, that data story that they had put out, that really rattled the government.
But I
were
have a
very
question
upset.
here. The economics of the channels. If we are saying that they are not very influential and they're going to enshittify themselves at some point.
That's hope.
Yeah.
I
They
think
still
have.
make a lot of money through advertisement.
Sure.
Advertisers are still going to them, right? So are advertisers thinking or exaggerating the influence which English news channels have?
But I think that comes to the purchasing power. No? The purchasing power is with the English speaker.
And it's
More,
so
But if
so
we are
much
saying a lot of people are not even
disproportionately
watching
more.
it.
But just
But the
one
numbers are there now.
I do
mean, there's
think the
same thing about
advertisers
India,
are
yeah.
outsizing it, but
No,
it's shifting
No, but
fast.
160 million is also like
Yeah.
the size of a European
No,
country.
but
No,
I
even
don't
if it's a
think
small proportion.
But Seema, I don't think
Numbers
those
are
many
there.
people also
No,
watching
maybe
it.
they're not
I think the
watching
numbers
English.
are all over the place.
Yeah.
Do read our bark
And-
story, etc.
and
But
there's
just
no
one
It's a
easier way of
safety thing that you just advertise
Yeah,
because
but
you're doing
exactly.
it. It's a reflex.
carpet
It's- yeah.
bombing. But I just
Stop
one.
it, people. Stop it.
But there's
Yeah.
just one thing that I want. So what you said about them being a little more aware and like you said, padhe likhe. I've said this before on Hafta. Back in before Newslaundry started in the 2000s, when I used to go around shooting documentary films and travel shows, etc. I was blown away by children in rural Rajasthan. I went to this place called Kuttumbakam, which is on the border of I think Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, where they make those first aid kits for the UN peacekeepers, etc. It's a cottage industry. I was doing a documentary film on, and because I used to meet a lot of the South Delhi journalists who were in their 20s. I was, I guess, in my 30s at the time, but they were in their mid to early 20s. Their understanding of governance was dismal. They did not know what an SDM did. They did not know what an SDM was. Like, the kid in that village knew that if his water is not working, which is the guy he has to go to, when he has to go to the junior engineer, when he has to go to the SDM, the MP is bloody useless, he can't do anything. Here they will stuff my MPs. This is not happening. Of course, MP will not say that, dude, I cannot make fuck happen. I mean, I have no control there. But he's not going to say that because it makes him look stupid. So, that paradox. The other thing is that when I have met some very young scholars and in Marathi media, because Hindi is not a barrier because I think I may be wrong, but Hindi is closest to Marathi. Some really young kids in Maharashtra, it's a lot more evolved and nuanced commentary there, especially on caste, etc., which English media doesn't have. So that what is padha likha is very contextual, in the sense of some of the most ignorant people, and I will not take the name here, but one very famous case that is still laughed at, and all my friends in broadcast will know who I'm talking about. A very respected editor was sitting with all the journalists, and they were talking about all these RJD and Nitish Kumar and Lalu and they all come from the Lohiite movement, and they're all fighting with each other. So this editor says, so we should go interview Ram Manohar Lohia. And so I had to say that actually he died a few decades ago. He said, oh. This person was a senior editor at a broadcast network, and my friends who are watching this know who.
Even
who
among students, when we talk to students in universities, I find the most politically evolved students to be
From
language
Maharashtra.
speakers.
Yeah,
No, not
language
Maharashtra,
speakers,
but like Hindi speakers or not English speakers. I rarely find anything.
So this is not to endorse the fact of why, but it's the perception that English is if you've learnt English, then you must have gone to a reasonable school, etc. This is not to say about how educated others are. Number two, even if I have the most evolved discussion on a Marathi case, supposing there's a big debate on Jyotiba Phule versus the RSS, etc., ideas in Maharashtra, for it to jump that
Yeah.
For it to jump that state and come out, English provides a link language for that story to travel out. It's almost like a boat that you take it out into other languages. Otherwise, you keep having an evolved debate in Marathi, it remains a Maharashtrian issue. But if you want to make it national, and English outlet picks it up, then, there can be a Telugu version. Somebody in Bengal will wake up and find commonalities and do stories. So English has that power.
No, that's a very important point. That's why digital media became disruptors, right? Because before we were very dependent on these English news channels or English newspapers to be that link which takes a story from a rural, Karnataka or Tamil Nadu and take it to Delhi.
So it's a link
Now
language.
we also, now we also have websites, so we are not that dependent on the media. But even then, there is a utility for a coverage by a newspaper or a channel in English, unfortunately.
But yours is an interesting case because you're working, your core is language, different languages, but your website is English. You think like you would have more of an influence, suppose, like would News Minute Tamil have more influence than a
100%.
News Minute
100%.
English talking about Tamil?
100%.
But I'd say that the fact that you
No,
are
I'm saying
News Minute
influence
in
on
English
politics.
Oh, like that.
existing is what is your megaphone. So you channelize all that Tamil, Kannada, Telugu, Tulu, whatever you plan. The fact that the big funnel for that would be English, that gives a big multiplier.
No,
shall we say.
I would actually prefer in all languages. English plus the other languages, because there is separate utility for both, right? There are people who read English who understand, but there are also policymakers, even politicians. A lot of them read only in their local language. So I would want to write in that so that people understand.
Right.
Sorry, just that you raise a very important point, but maybe you should have another show on that. On this whole business of why are politicians going to YouTube influencers? Why is even Shah Rukh Khan going to bad comedians on YouTube?
Really?
Because the power of also cinema.
Why is the PM giving his second interview to this
PM's
Alex guy?
first interviews, which were like 8-9 hours long, whatever, with 3 journalists questioning him, tanked on his thing. But so he had to get these
Nikhil
Kapools in
Kamath
place.
and
He went to Nikhil Kamath, he went to Zero Dha CEO guys, then he went to Lex, etc. So which is a big shift, and they must have been really concerned that Mr. Modi is not able to draw those numbers, and that showed in the Lok Sabha polls. So YouTube functions as some sort of a gauge, a very sometimes misleading gauge, etc. But it is some kind of a barometer of who's watching, etc. And people are moving to that. But that's like another story, because podcasts are like, really, Abhinandan? Oh, acha, oh, is that right, Dhanya? It's not a question of, Manisha, like, why didn't you do this? It's just like allowing you to, it's like a fawning.
But I guess also depends on the podcast. But I was talking to someone, and I think we are misreading or not quite understanding Modi's entire interview strategy. And I think on his communication side, it is very well thought out, and it's not always about numbers. It is about which is the audience he's appealing to. There was a time when he wanted to appeal to the mainstream media watching audience, and the mainstream media has a lot of traffic that does not get either hooked onto the bark or onto the website, because it goes via WhatsApp, and Manisha has discussed as well. It does get shared a lot. So that is why he was also appeasing them to set that narrative setting. He achieved that. Then for sheer numbers, he was going to the YouTube influencers, because the social media game, he was way ahead of all his contemporaries. I think with this Lex Luthor or whatever his name is, this guy, he's actually appealing to... Lex Luthor was the villain in Superman.
Exactly, yeah.
But he's Lex only.
Yeah.
His newfound love for the Videshi podcaster, he's not even looking to get the numbers in India. His audience is that audience, so that audience can influence that country. So he is identifying who he gives his interview to, not by numbers, but what message he wants to give to what audience. So the Zeroda is not about numbers. It's about a particular audience he wants to reach out to.
Yeah, the young entrepreneurs.
The Lex is not about
guys.
numbers. It is who he is reaching. Yeah, it is. So he is talking to the international audience here. He's not even talking to the Indian audience.
And now he's on Truth Social, so.
And he's only following Vance and Trump.
And he doesn't want any real questions.
Yeah, that though one can't. And and the
But
thing
this
is,
podcast is very boring. It was very, very boring.
I think Mr. Modi has become very boring generally. He was a compelling watch earlier. He's just really boring to watch now. He's
Even though I would
11
really
years
want...
is exhausting. So I think, countries do get tired, bored of like people. So yeah, it is quite boring.
And that whole Osho type thing of his, he ends every sentence with a shish. Even
I
Osho
mean,
used
the
to
whole
talk like
fasting
that.
thing was
Barification.
stretched
Yeah.
for too long. Like for half an hour, they're discussing fasting. Why do you fast? Who are the which?
He lift himself above being a public
was a bit-
representative who's meant to
Although
do
I
his
And
think
that
job.
guy said he also fasts. He also fasted
45
before this.
hours.
Yeah.
Although I think it would be really, if he genuinely gives a long interview feeling, it'll be great fun to watch. I think there'll be a lot, because all said and done, the man has been in politics for so long. If he genuinely just talks even about politics and his actual view of politics, it would be interesting to watch. But it's so curated. It's so like, I'm a
Yep.
saint, I'm a fakir.
Right. So let's get on to the emails before we wind up the podcast. Now, I just want to point out many subscribers are kind of dissatisfied with how many emails we are introducing. Some say the email should be read as part of the Hafta rather than a special Hafta we have separately. Just to give you context, I have 51 emails right now. And many of them are over the 150 word limit, and one is 932 words. Just saying. So if you have to read all of them, this podcast would be 5 hours long at least. So we are figuring out how we should break up the emails. Should we have a separate podcast? And Peri Sai, Teja, you have written 3 emails and you're saying Newslaundry emails are going down the RTI route. Dude, I've read 3 of your emails. And so many people have written for the first time. So I will read your email, but we are not purposely sidelining your email. 52 emails to read in this episode. Poor Seema, Manisha, and Dhanya will be here forever. So I'll read a few, and we will be having a meeting later next week to figure out. Let's try to address as many emails as possible. There are a few ways of doing it. And so do write to me at abhinandansekhri@gmail.com. So you can suggest how we actually break this up. One suggestion that was given by one of my colleagues here is reduce the word limit to 100. I think that you guys will not be able to really articulate what you want to say. One is we put a little box here, we throw in chits, and we pull out that we will only read 10 emails. And if your email is one of them, so it's a transparent way of doing it. We read the emails, at least I do. Manisha, do you?
Yeah.
We may not read them out. So we are getting your feedback. But let's say this 50 becomes 100, and I hope it does, and I hope it becomes 500. There is just a limitation of times. So if you have any ideas how to address this while continuing the tradition of Newslaundry of having this engagement with the subscribers, let's do that. And one of you have written that, can a subscriber come on a podcast? We had several podcasts with just the subscribers, and we'll be doing one again this year. So wait for that. So let's go with the ones marked in the color, Manisha, this week, and we'll leave the rest for now. And we'll definitely have one more Hafta letters only podcast. And then once your recommendations come in, we'll figure out how do we include the emails.
But we do read all the emails. So
Yeah.
that's important. Like in terms of, if the main purpose is to let your feedback reach us, it does reach us every week.
So we'll choose the ones which are shorter right now.
So Mansi says, I want to appreciate you for inviting Dr. Mahaskar in Hafta 527 to discuss the events in Maharashtra. It makes a big difference when a panelist has a genuine lived experience while talking about a region. When it comes to Maharashtra, I find NL Hafta discussions, which are so nuanced otherwise, to be overly reliant on older themes like Shiv Sena's policies in the 90s, example by Abhinandan, or limited, example Anand restricting Shivaji to be a symbol of resistance against outsiders. As someone who went to a state school in Mumbai and learned English, Hindi and Marathi, I didn't get the hoopla around the 3-language formula. But Jayashree's comments in Hafta 526 helped me understand the context of Tamil Nadu. This is why local voices are so valuable. I hope you can continue to be a platform for those with current nuanced views on regional topics. I completely agree. Actually, that Hafta was...
Yeah, even I learned
just
so
to
much from
understand
you.
that whole Aurangzeb thing and what the fight really was very interesting.
And another,
And then again, English media dumbs it down so much. Like that kind of nuance you can only get from him.
exactly. And we're not always lucky with guests because
Yeah.
sometimes a guest is really good academically, but he's just not an enthusiastic speaker. You really have to get him to, like, we've had Hafta guests who, when you read their writings, are amazing, but when they come here, they'll like give you a one-line answer. So then it becomes very difficult. So you have to find that perfect. And I think, the professor was magic as far as Hafta is concerned. It's a one-line mail.
Vinod says, hope you stayed up to watch Newcastle play Liverpool.
Vinod, yes, I did. And what an upset. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I love an underdog story.
Yashveer Beniwal says, hey folks, first time writer here, long time lurker, enthusiastic eavesdropper. Been tuning in for the past 3 years every week. Hearing the tariff talk, I was instantly reminded of this Ray Dalio video, which, in my humble opinion, explains things better than my brain ever could. Would love to hear your thoughts on it. And Abhinandan ji, please don't let the complainers get to you. You're a national treasure, part philosopher, part comedian, and 100% unfiltered greatness. Shine on you, glorious gem.
Yashveer, thank you so much. You are in the minority on this because a lot of people feel I'm just the unnecessary appendage on Hafta. That
No, no one feels that.
so many
I think people
feel.
want you to host. That's very clear. No one has said. They may hate you as a host, but they still want you to.
They
still want you to host
yeah.
it.
So Yashveer, I really enjoyed this video. By the way, I did watch it.
I'll watch it. Yeah,
But the link is in the show notes. Do check this link out. And these are the kind of inputs that our subscribers give, which,
Ray Dalio.
yeah.
Who is this? Some
Well-
philosopher?
Well, he's not a philosopher. He's described as, I believe the world is changing in big ways, and that haven't happened before in a lifetime and have many times in our history. And, I mean, you can check out his book, Changing World.
Okay.
It's on,
Mahesh says, hi team, NL programs refer to the Indian Express story refuting that $21 million grant to CEPPS. Someone dismissed the story on the grounds that IE is a Congress outfit. Really?
Who dismissed it? I don't know.
I don't remember. This is a very strong thing to say. We would have countered it if someone did.
Hmm.
I just wanted to inquire whether NL does fact checking on such external stories and only puts out independently validated story. There's a lot of pussyfooting on many media outlets about IE's claims. I understand it's important to give due credit, but I think it's also important to put out authenticated stories. It would have been better if NL had said it had authenticated IE's claims. I don't know what this is about actually.
This is
I'll
Was
tell
I
you.
there?
I'll tell you. Yeah,
Huh?
finish.
This is
Hmm.
a-
My series recommendation, The Newsroom. Sometimes I feel Abhinandan is the Desi Don Quixote, aka Jeff Daniels. Hat tip for the team's excellent work. NL Hafta, Charcha, South Central, and Nuisance are my only sources of news. Abhinandan and Rajshri make ANA awesome.
I sidestepped the word limit by using acronyms. Well done, buddy. So what Mahesh is talking about is that when they said that USAID was giving 21 million for election interference, quote unquote, in
All of
India,
that
it was
had
actually
actually
going to
gone to- yeah.
Bangladesh. And then someone said, actually, it was coming to India. It is not just Bangladesh. And so at least Mahesh, everyone here can speak for themselves. For me, the source has value. The brand has value. So if, let's say, NPR puts something out, I think it is an extremely responsible organization that will give accurate information. If, for example, Alt News puts out a fact check, I think it will be fact check. It is highly unlikely they'll put out something that is factually inaccurate. So in that sense, the Indian Express, the brand matters to me. So if they have done that, I will not do independent fact checking. And that is true for brand. It's also true for journalists. And there are other journalists or there are other platforms that I will not just follow blindly. So that is at least my measure. It's not an exact science like a mathematical formula, but generally that's how it is for me.
No,
How is
and
it for you?
also, I mean, I wouldn't follow anyone blindly, but there are some stories which are not possible for us to fact check independently. Therefore, we have to attribute to them. But here, if the Express story was wrong, the pushback from the government would have been huge, which didn't come. And the government could have put out some proof, right? Which they didn't. So I guess we can safely assume that the story was right. I mean, the only thing was from Amit Malviya, who will tweet about mangoes
Who will
falling.
anyway.
Yeah.
But this is Jay Majumdar's story, and also it's important to note that the story explained its sources and how it reached that number and where it went to find
Exactly.
that.
No, it was a
Methodology
good
matters.
story.
So,
Yeah,
so that's a good story.
How do you deal
I don't
with
need to
this?
fact
I
check
mean,
that.
do you have to fact check anything that you quote? Do you have to fact check it independently,
Well,
or is the brand
I
enough?
think gut, not sometimes always the brand. But if sometimes brands can do like crazy things in today's vitiated media atmosphere.
Correct.
But we can't fact check everything. You go between a mix of gut, your assessment of who's putting it out, when it is being
And
put
the
out,
methodology.
and the methodology. And here they did not say we have it on credible sources. This is it. They conjectured, they triangulated, and said something.
Right.
So they were not exceeding their brief.
And I want to add something. Now, newspapers in India forever have ignored each other's existence. For example, Hindu breaks a story, Indian Express will write about the same story without acknowledging the Hindu. But websites like us, we don't work like that. For example, I will call Seema and tell her that this story is coming. Can you read it? Do you think it's good enough? Do you want to republish it? Then I will tell her what is the evidence or methodology we followed. Same she would do to me, or we talk to Scroll, we talk to Newslaundry. So we have a different
Yeah, I think and
equation
also
altogether.
Yes, and I think at the risk of like praising digital media, etc., we have, of course, all have our faults, but I think it's a whole tradition, a different tradition of collaborative journalism that we've been able to put into measure in large part about kind of treating
Sometimes I
news
just
not
feel
just as a
happy
commodity. Yeah,
when
we're
she has
happy to
read
see
a
a good
story and she's
story.
like, okay, go ahead.
Or can we share a story or whatever. So I think we have to move beyond this business of exclusive, first on our channel and just us.
Ibrahim says, thank you for the best song recommendation in the last hafta. Really loved it. What was it?
Probably that obscene holy
Anand's-
song, which Anand's Bhojpuri song.
Can you please do a light-hearted story on how the song was conceived, as it looks to be the best collab and use of comments section ever done in India?
Oh no, he's talking about the one that where if Yaduvanshi Yadav hain, तो क्या that one that we had done 2 weeks ago.
क्या राजदीप ही रेडियो है, क्या अर्नब ही डोरनॉब है, क्या गोदी मीडिया ही रेडियो रवांडा है, क्या न्यूज लॉन्ड्री ही आजाद मीडिया है? Yes.
Thanks, Ibrahim. Yeah, that is very funny.
Prasad says, hi Abhinandan, in the middle of a conversation, please do not interrupt with comments of what other news
Sorry,
channels
what did you say?
No, it's specific. Don't interrupt comments.
Sorry, what did you say?
Do not interrupt comments with what other news channels are saying.
Oh, okay. I can interrupt
It
otherwise.
just disrupts the flow. In episode 5 to 7, you interrupted Dr. Sumit Mahaskar and went on a rant about what Times Now anchor was saying. No one's interested in what these idiots are saying. Very few watch TV news precisely for these reasons. Love the work you guys are doing. Keep up the good work. In Hafta, love listening to Anand and Manisha, for they bring slightly different perspective.
Yes, sir.
Actually,
Prasad.
a lot of, just in the English, the outsized influence of television media at least, a lot of our listeners complain when we talk about media on Hafta, even though we're a media critique website, that they're like, we don't want to know what they're saying. Just get on with what you want to say, what your guest wants to say.
I think enshittification is on. Enshittification is on.
A lot of people actually say that can you stop talking about what channels are doing. Hi folks, love the discussion this week on Aurangzeb, Maratha history and Mayawati's decline. Curious as to why full Hafta episodes are being released on YouTube. While I will continue to be a subscriber irrespective, I was wondering if it wouldn't incentivize people to continue subscriptions. I know it works to get more subscribers when it is behind the paywall, because that's why I became a subscriber. Just wanted to know your thinking behind this decision.
So Sunny, like many things here, we are very transparent about most things. So we also often way too transparent about our strategy. What we do is, like for example, the Awful and Awesome was pulled behind the paywall after it was free for so long because it becomes habit forming for people. And once it becomes habit forming, we pull it behind the paywall. And then about 20 to 30% of those people will start paying for accessing it. That was the experience with Hafta the first time. When Hafta was free, people used to give money. Then they're giving money just for the love of independent media and our mission statement. But when you pull it behind the paywall, then they will pay you because it's become habit forming. So what we do is, once we do that, then it kind of plateaus. Then we put out maybe 5, 8, 10 episodes outside again to get a larger catchment. Like, like some of our Haftas on YouTube get 40, 50, 60, 70,000, views. And then we'll again put it behind the paywall after a while. So it's strategic. It works on stories. It works on podcasts. So this is something we decide every quarter when we have an HOD meeting. So if everybody just for the goodness of their heart would start paying, we would put nothing behind the paywall. But that's not how it works. And it's not the best option. It's not the best formula. But it's better than what we have. And as I've said very often here, those who think they have the perfect formula often screw up. We can only improve on what it was earlier. So I think this is better than it was earlier. It's not perfect. Maybe the next generation of, news professionals would improve on this as well. But that's the thinking.
Vanayu says, hi NL team, I've been a long-time supporter and admirer of your work. While NL and the News Minute cover a wide range of issues, I've noticed there isn't much focus on business and economic coverage, whether through articles, podcasts or interviews. It would be great to see more content on global Indian economic trends and events as part of NL's strategy. One idea could be a long-form podcast where experts break down recent economic developments, both in India and globally, and discuss what they would mean for the future. Not only would this make for an engaging discussion, but it could also become a valuable IP for NL, helping attract more subscribers and contributions. Of course, I understand this would take time and resources, so maybe it would be done once every 2 to 3 months to keep it manageable.
So, Vanayu, this is something that I have been wanting to do for such a long time, and Manisha will vouch for this. I've spoken to many really good business and economic commentators and journalists. They tend to be a little more expensive than generalists. because they tend to be older. Hardcore ground reporting can be done by someone with intent, diligence, and just a passion for journalism. But for business journalism, one has to, just like climate, you need area experts because there's a lot of context, policy, there's science. So they tend to be older, they tend to be more expensive, and they often tend to not want to do a full-time gig with anyone. So whenever we can, we get many of them to write for us. And although I will recommend a friend of mine who had said, dude, will you do something for Newslaundry with us? But he's running his own organization and he has a fantastic podcast called The Core Report. I was very keen we do something with Govindraj. But since we couldn't, he's doing a fantastic job. And like, you guys said, we are not competing with each other. We don't have it yet. When we do, you can come back. But till then, check out Govindraj Ethiraj's The Core Report. I think it's a fantastic economics, finance, and business podcast.
Sumant says Newslaundry only reads the letter of subscribers who pay. I understand the economics. Maybe put this episode behind the paywall now for this reason. For democracy to work, all voices must be heard and addressed. After watching the interview of Yuval Noah Harari by Dhanya, I wonder how strong is the fourth pillar of democracy if even the media only listens and addresses who helped them. Please excuse me, but this is not an attack. Rather, I would like to hear the opinion of everyone who's on the panel. My support in NL's case is we are in the Godi of the truth.
He wrote the same letter to me.
What you did with you?
No. What he's saying is that Abhinandan has been saying that we should read out the letters of only subscribers.
Yeah.
So he's saying, how can media only be reading out letters of subscribers or people who support them, whatever? Should it be restricted that way?
Yeah, I get that.
I mean, the longer point, Yuval Noah Harari is there in our email, but not in this.
So I've explained this actually in an older Hafta with the whole subscriber versus ad driven versus state, sponsored media driven, and everyone can give their view because you asked for the panel's view. Reading someone's emails is an incentive for them to subscribe, but that doesn't mean we are only listening to them. Also, Sumant, make no mistake, we will not decide that we are doing these kind of stories because otherwise we'd only be doing tech stories out of Bangalore, because tech bros will pay for your story on private equity. So that is why the entire editorial filter of senior editors, that what story you do matters. And that is determined by pure news, factors. This is an incentive that we will read your mail out, and we get ideas which if we agree with, but it is not that we will only, do stories or listen to them. It's just an incentive. That's
In
all
fact,
it is.
I don't know about you, but I fully read all the YouTube comments also. Because
me too.
actually, some very engaged audience you find on YouTube and some very good commentary and feedback. So I engage with even non-subscribers on YouTube because they have a lot of valuable things to say. And as journalists, we have to be aware of, you have to have that sounding board all the time.
I mean, just to give you an idea, we sent a reporter for 21 days to Manipur. I don't even know if anyone from Manipur is, reading Newslaundry. And that was a very expensive story. It was super expensive. Series of stories. Shiv. Not 21,
Shiv,
27
Prateek
days.
and Priyali. 3 people.
27 days you guys spend there, right, Priyali? Yeah. And per day, how much do you spend?
No,
Okay,
we
so-
had.
So I'm just saying, it's, it's, this dialogue is, but 100, it's not a referendum that we are running here.
This
So
is more like a privilege we
I'm
want to
saying
give
Manipur,
to
at least
subscribers.
something was happening at that time. We recently sent 2 reporters to Andaman Nicobar Islands and they were there almost for 30 days. Also because you can't get the helicopter and you're stuck also. But they were there for 30 days, continuously followed by the IB. I don't know who's going to read it, but we have to do what we have to do.
right.
Peri Saiti Ja, greetings to the NL team. I must protest first that my handwritten letter sent 2 weeks ago was not mentioned, not read, despite adhering to the 150 limit rule. So we read we read it.
The link is in the show notes. We read your handwritten letter, Perry.
Coming to the issue that is troubling me the most is the systemic asphyxiation of data from government's end. No census. Even Iraq had conducted its post-COVID census by now after 40 years. No data on deaths due to Kumbh mismanagement. No data on PM fund during COVID. No data on number of migrants. No data on almost anything useful. On the other hand, the recent controversy surrounding Shashi Tharoor by the much venerated Indian Express Group is shocking itself. Seeing that many other reputed news organizations carried the English translation verbatim, even NL quotes heavily from the Express from IE. These 2 nodes of information to the public makes them blind skeptical. democracy indeed dies in darkness.
So I think Perry's talking about where
Shashi
Shashi's...
Tharoor's Malayalam interview was misquoted, which I think was misquoted. I think poor. Though you don't agree much with me.
No,
Because we were discussing that.
the problem was that there were a couple of his interviews he had given to TNI also the same thing before. So basically he said that if the party does not want me to do the stuff that I offer to do, I have other options. He did add that my other options are academics, which people left out. But in a previous interview to New Indian Express, he did not give those options. He just stopped with, I have other options. So TNI also uploaded their interview a day after the Express one came. So everybody was confused. They did not realize it was
Does
an
he
old
have
interview.
options or not, and what options?
Yeah.
But in the Express story, I think
The misquote
very
was the
clear.
other one where he said that the Kerala has no leaders.
Express admitted
Yeah,
they
ran
put
a
out
that was a
correction.
misquote where they said that Kerala leaders, he basically said Kerala leaders are not
was
good,
a-
is what
yeah.
Express wrote.
Why Shashi Tharoor took so long to say this is the only point in dispute. I think Express clearly misquoted and it admitted as much. So it kind of ran a corrections column.
The Seeker says, I've been following NL for quite some time. The more I listen to NL Hafta, the more I find myself aligning to the right of centre. Although I do not agree with Mandir Masjid politics, I also don't agree with left's LGBTQ stand. I agree that we need to respect people with different preferences, but this was going to another level now, endangering the future generations. Thanks to BJP in India and Trump in US, this culture will be suppressed. I was very pleased with the Ranveer Allahabadiya controversy. The guy deserves every bit of criticism coming his way. In this day and age, when clicks are the only things that matter, it was refreshing to see Indians have some shame left. I agree that there are worse things said and done and that they need to be equally condemned. It also shows that the right is not biased and is willing to take down one of its own when it comes to basic moral values. I was disappointed at NL team's conciliatory tone towards Ranveer. Firstly, right is not taking down one of its own.
Yeah.
Just because Ranveer, it's very
He was sucking
transactional.
up to them.
It's not, they're not, yeah.
So also on there's no conciliatory
I think
tone.
it's jealousy.
It's just consistency with values. Yeah, I mean, obscene. So ban it. I mean, why should we go at? In fact, that entire nuisance I did where I just ripped into Ranveer.
Yeah.
You see the YouTube comments on that. Abhinandan is picking on a kid. You're just punching down at someone who's half your age or whatever the fuck it is.
And
I
he's
said-
he's just a YouTuber.
He's
He's not
just
a journalist.
YouTuber. He's not a journalist.
should
Why are
he
you
be-
picking on him?
Yeah.
So if we disagree with something, we'll go at him. But if I mean, it's values that we have to be consistent with, na? So in fact, I think that we were consistent with values, and he's not left or right. He's an idiot,
Yeah.
and it's
More to
okay
the
to
right.
defend an
Sorry,
idiot as well.
If we have to talk about great, the right being so kind of conscious of good language and all, what was Anurag Thakur doing as a minister? Is that not abusive? Kapil Mishra, who's currently the law minister of Delhi, people call to hate them in all manner of obscenities. For me,
parliament-
is what happened in Parliament
What
with the
happened
sitting
eventually?
MP. He was elevated to contest against the former chief minister of Delhi. So let's not kind of give this to them. This is because the whole patriarchy, it's a great attack on the family. This whole idea of
Jealousy.
Jealousy.
could be
He's
jealousy as well,
formed
and which means that Ranveer Allahabadiya had no business saying that. But is it criminal? And if that's the standard, then let's start applying it across to all kinds of people. And the fish, the rotting starts at the head. We're very clear about that.
My
and in language, it's very
conspiracy is
clear what's happening for the
broadcasting
past 10, 12 years. Yeah. And to try and get a public approval for broadcasting
That's
bill
all.
to shut
That's
it
all it
down
was.
without any commentary and to go on that set. After several days, what were they expecting? Like sort of word clouds would hang around, or you'd kind of arrest the wall. This is beyond Kafka and completely
and
stupid.
also, the Seeker, there's no their own. I mean, if you see Arnab's debates about Yogi 7 years ago, there's no their own. It is very
Yeah. Stupid
it's-
man.
So-
What all
but,
he's called
but
Yogi.
on the LGBTQ, I mean, I kind of agree with you. I think the conversation had become just ridiculous. And Dhanya and I may disagree on it, and that's also because of my age and I'm a guy or privileged. But I do think that some of the commentary that I hear, I just hold my head and I'm like, dude, this is just bizarre. I definitely think it is at a zone which in India it's irrelevant, so it's not a political issue, which is why we don't talk much about it. But in the West, in America, I completely understand why very reasonable people who, even personally, I know they will never make that statement public, but they said, this entire super wokeness has gone into a zone which is completely, we can't identify with. And I understand that sentiment.
So where I disagree with that is it's kind of easy to say it's gone out of whack and all, but it's the smallest, most vulnerable minority, which in a way is immutable and it has no defenses. And it's historically known to have been treated in a particular way in what it sees as expression and self-expression. All those people who are now saying that this is too much because it's a small minority will come after every other person. So you start with an anti-trans thing because it sounds very logical to say that please don't, how trivial is it to talk about bathrooms and, washrooms, and there should be separate one for men and women, and why are you talking about nude beaches and the access female sports? But a lot of the criticism was based on a willful exaggeration of that. And it's a test case. So, there is disability, there's a sense of expression. And why I think we should support it is because it's only when everyone is free and everyone is treated freely that all of us would be free. But I think that was the importance of the LGBT.
But again, see, what I disagree with is when you say we should support it. What is it? Define it to me. Because I support, the email also said, that I think everybody we should all support it. Define it. Because I can tell you specific... I can tell you specific things about it that I think are idiotic. That doesn't mean I am bigoted towards trans. I think there are certain demands, there are certain aspects. If you cannot have a conversation about something, and this I can tell you as being an activist, if you are unable to converse about something without calling someone a bigot, you have lost all hope of ever making a change. And I think this conversation in the West has come to realize that you cannot define everybody who doesn't agree with everything you're saying as someone who's bigoted. And neither has caste done that, neither has race done that. That was the difference between why Martin Luther King could make a difference and Malcolm X could not. It was not just because Malcolm X died young, so did Martin Luther King. But there's a very real reason that this man said, we will engage, we will talk, but we will fight for our rights. And one man said, fuck you, I will not talk to anyone. If you don't agree with me, you're all, traitors to the cause. I don't think so. Unless you can define it, then I can tell you whether I agree with it or not. But you cannot just call everything
small
it.
definition of it. There are many it's involved in this particular case. Is the right of somebody who's a transgender or who is a kinnar or whoever to enter the US. There's a ban now. So I think we can begin with describing
everyone is
that's
for.
a no-brainer. No, that's not a no-brainer.
I
Because it starts
that.
It starts
it
like
starts
that.
with the J.K. Rowling. It starts with
No, but I can support that, but does that mean I have to...
No, because you see, things take time in a discourse to settle. Maybe if it would have been allowed to kind of just happen, it finds its place. Its newness, its ability to shock, its ability to make it so, people so angry, led to a phase where people felt that, look, is there disproportionate time going to it? If it was allowed to settle, maybe it would have just found its place like the race conversation and the caste conversation, which has spent, it's had much more of a time. This is exactly what was said when women wanted equal rights. Why do you want to ride a bicycle is what French women were told. Why do you want to vote?
Again,
so it all starts like that.
I disagree.
Not
What
straw
she's
man.
saying
It
is
always starts like that.
No. See, like the
it
Imam
doesn't
Khalif.
start like that. Again, you
always starts like that. Just look at your history books, whether it's a conversation
You have
on
to
race, on class,
take
or
people
on gender.
out of their comfort
I
zones to
understand
start
that.
conversations.
I understand.
Like the Imam Khalif controversy.
Sorry,
So
I just want to
people
respond
say
to... Sorry,
yeah.
I just want to
That was
respond to
a
what you're
shit
saying is...
controversy.
Again, Seema, what you're saying is something that someone like the email writer or me can agree with. But that is not what I'm talking about. You cannot say that, it always starts with writing exactly. Sorry, that's not the same thing as someone who's saying that I want to compete in a women's team and I can have a conversation saying that, I don't think that's entirely fair. And saying it is the same thing as wanting to ride a bike. It's not the same thing. The thing is, if everything is racism, then nothing is racism. If everything is bigotry, then nothing is bigotry. The moment, and we talk about nuance all the time when it comes to right. There can be no nuance in this conversation.
No, they can be. I think you are talking about cancel culture, right? You're basically saying that everybody's cancelled the moment they question. What we're saying is not that. What we're saying is that some of the conversations are problematic and they have to be questioned. That you cannot say that, for example, if some in America, we are seeing a movement where trans people are being sidelined completely. And we cannot, and we cannot add to that conversation by saying that, you can have some nuance here, some nuance there. No, that conversation has to be shut down with support, right?
Sure. But that conversation, not every conversation. What I'm saying is...
But how does it start? It starts by injecting a doubt in your mind that, okay, maybe they're asking too much. Okay, maybe the demands are too much. You're injecting doubt into the minds of people.
Through conversations. But if you are unable to have a conversation, you can't transform anyone. What I'm saying is, I agree with
J.K.
you.
Rowling.
Yeah.
She's such a powerful person. Harry Potter.
And
I
she's
love her
been on
books.
for years.
She's been
Okay,
going on and on.
I'm not talking
But
about
that
J.K.
J.K.
Rowling.
Rowling
Which is fine.
controversy
I'm not
was
talking about
just
J.K. Rowling.
stupid.
Again, it's J.K. Rowling. Forget J.K. Rowling.
Which
I'm talking about
conversations?
us. I'm talking about us and this email.
But we're just having a conversation.
I agree. But
Which is fine.
But what I'm saying is, That is not true in a lot of conversations. There is an inability to have a conversation, and all of us are unaffected parties. Let's be clear, we are unaffected parties, so our conversation can be a lot more dispassionate, which is why I took the example of Malcolm X and Martin Luther King, because they were affected parties. When they're affected parties involved in the conversations, I find it is very difficult to have a sensible conversation.
But I'm sorry to say this, but
Obviously,
in
right,
affected
because
parties,
they
It's
are
not
ones-
obvious.
yeah.
I think the Mani Khalif example is actually a good one to kind of dissect what we're saying here. She was completely targeted, in my opinion, for how she looked, and especially I think as a brown woman, and put to the standards of how a female athlete. And there was no proof of any of the testing. Nothing had happened, and people
Exactly.
went, and that
It was
was
just
that
conspiracy
was
after conspiracy.
assholery of the first order. But in that conversation, you also had people who were just negating the idea of testosterone testing. That is unscientific.
No, so problem
it exists.
is
There are different levels, and you have to account for the fact that there are different levels.
So that is something that, for example, the Olympics committee has to look at some point
Yeah.
of time and address,
Exactly.
right? It can't be done with everyone just having their opinion about it. And
And
at
you
that
can't say it doesn't
particular time,
exist. You can't say I don't believe in it, so it doesn't exist. There is science to it,
So that is
and you
something
have
they
to have
have
levels.
to decide. Yeah.
So my point is that I think in that urge to support, let's not also
Call
negate
everybody
the fact that
transphobic, you're saying.
yeah.
Yeah.
But here, I think we must also realize where the balance of power is here. So, am I going to go after one transgender who's affected in that? I don't want to get into like Martin Luther King, and that's like another thing for me, another trajectory. But if there's an affected party, I will give a little more weight to them. If there's a disabled person, so that's all. And I think that, and what I'm saying is that that conversation will also find what we like to call a balance or nuance. Maybe in 5 years, that conversation, it always starts where it's kind of, immense shock value, and then it kind of settles.
No, and all these things of
Like the
immense
gender
shock
panic
values
around.
exaggerated also. For example, there must be one case, for example, where a child has been given the freedom for a gender change surgery or whatever. It's exaggerated, so there is doubt injected. When when it comes to real matters, people will be like, oh no, everything is problematic around us, so we cannot support
But
this. So
I think India is
it's-
not an issue.
it's like a
but I
deterrent
think in the
factor.
US it is.
It's
it is.
not
It is.
just
serious
I'm not
paranoia.
saying it is not, but the paranoia also is. I think it is also artificial in a way.
No, also, where we say India, we should pay attention to the way this conversation goes, because the way it is shut down is used in India to shut down other conversations they don't like. That's why it's important to watch how America, how that conversation progresses. Or if it's gone to now, meaning passport, thak, then we should be worried, and we should study how that conversation went, what it was. So you're right that in India, maybe that whole transgender thing that did not come is not directly affecting us, but it affects us because we do Xerox versions of that. We do our own version, Indian versioning of how that is shut down. We
And that
should worry
paranoia will
about it.
slowly start
Yeah.
coming.
Amrita says, replying to Nitin's disparaging statements on EU and tariffs, living in the EU, I feel a lot of the useless, pompous EU view in India comes from perceptions of European colonizers in the US. But a lot of post-war EU positioning was not a matter of choice. Germany was built on initial support of the US and has military bases here. If you travel around here, especially Central and Eastern Europe, this continent has suffered a lot, and collapse of Soviet Union led to a level of pain that in India we haven't experienced in recent times. Please don't compare. We went through partition, boss. Okay. The values and policies are lessons from its past. Position on Kashmir, for example, is led by contrasting ideals on self-determination for EU and unit for India. The problem in the Indian approach to Europe is there's little care for the struggles of this continent and a projection of historic issues with Britain and US on it. What did he say? What disparaging things did
He
say?
said that, useless, pompous EU, there is, especially among, policy think tank community, I've heard this often from many saying that, EU whining about it is, forget it. And to an extent, I get where it's coming from. But also the historical context of Europe only agreed to all these things because America said we'll take over. Like Japan doesn't have a nuclear arsenal. Technologically, they are way ahead of the rest of the world. They don't have one now because US said that we will take care of you. So today, if you say that suddenly, so all that, like Ukraine, hindsight is 2020. Nah? Ukraine would not have given up its nuclear arsenal had they known that Trump is going to come and say, forget, we won't take care of you. Because had Ukraine been a nuclear armed power, today things would have been very different. And they were convinced to give up their nuclear arsenal because when the Soviet Union collapsed, a large chunk of the Soviet Union's nuclear arsenal was in Ukraine. They said, okay, we'll give it to Russia because at the same time, it's also true that, the march of NATO was, in fact, many countries within the EU were not so keen that America insists that Ukraine join EU because it would threaten Russia. Anyway, it's more complicated, but yeah, I get where this is coming from, because EU is given a disrespectful, kind of address by many people who talk about this
The
issue.
only thing EU should be celebrated for, maybe a few other things also, is that they did bear the brunt of the world wars, the kind of lives they lost. If you count Soviet
The
lives
damage to
and
cities.
Europe, there's been destruction. That kind of, I think that's what they're referring to. That Indians go on about fighting wars and jumping here and there because
But
we have no
cities
memory of
weren't-
when fathers are burying their sons. That's what wars are about, and at scale. So I think EU saw that. But the other thing they need to be complimented for is their understanding of the digital medium, AI, and their ability to regulate it. And I think all this muskery and all this Bezosery and this Zuckerbergery stems from wanting to, so they may pretend they're talking about far right and all. Of course, they are far right. They want these governments to go, the entire EU architecture, how to regulate AI without stifling innovation. They have got they've got the Goldilocks number on that.
Okay, so let's come to the recommendations of the week before we wind up Hafta. Let's start with Dhanya. You have any recommendations that could enrich the lives of our listeners?
I don't know what. I'm going to give the same recommendation on South Central and
Sure.
Hafta. So I was reading this book by Poonam Agarwal. It's called India Inked. It's quite interesting because she's been following elections for quite a few years. She's the first one who brought out that electoral bonds are actually traceable while the government is claiming it is not. So it's an investigative piece on how strategies work and how elections work. Quite nice. I mean, I'm not finished it, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so I forgot we had to do recommendations, but I can think of a book I just finished reading, which is called Careless People. It's by a former New Zealand diplomat who worked closely with Facebook. So it's like a whistleblower account.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know
and
what
it's
you're
a
talking
brilliant
about.
book.
Yeah.
And I did it in like one sitting.
Oh,
and
you haven't
really
read it?
Please
Good, huh?
read it. Careless People. It's a brilliant book and it goes down brilliantly. And very, very well written. There's something we could all learn about how to write and how to whistleblow if we want to at some point, but just how to describe things in a most accessible way. And I'd recommend a film called In Galiyon Se. At a time of complete kind of death of Bombay cinema, there's nothing new coming out. There's a very good film by Avinash Das, which actually, and it reminded me of Saeed Mirza's Nukkad. It's really an awesome film. It restores kind of the joy of a Hindi film song. The actor and actress are like dancing, jumping, and it's beautiful. It's about two gullies, Hanuman Gully and a Rahman Gully. And the conversations that happen at that corner. And it's got sharp Muslim characters too. It's not just Mr. Goody Goody or the terrorist. It's kind of really done that well. And and I recommend everybody watches The Wire Wrap, which is like this weekly show we do at The Wire, which does it's a sober discussion of whatever's happened in that week. And this week's you'd find very instructive. It's got like Kunal Purohit and Ajoy Ashirwad, our political editor, and Shravasti Dasgupta is anchoring it. It's quite cool. Watch it if you can.
Right.
So since Aurangzeb is the flavor of the week, Express's Sunday article, When Shivaji's grandson visited Aurangzeb's tomb, is a very good piece. We should read it. We should know more about our history from real sources. I quite enjoyed reading Akar Patel's piece on The Wire on why 11 years is enough for any leader who wants to do anything in the world. 11 years is enough. He takes the example of Napoleon. He talks about Erdogan. He talks about Mao, Nehru, and where Modi fits in. He's got his 11 years. What has he done?
What has he done? Very nice.
And since everyone is watching Adolescence on Netflix, I highly recommend reading Lakshmi Priya's piece on Manosphere in India, how the Manosphere is lurking and attracting young Indian boys and men. It's on the News Minute. We've also published it. It's a very good long-form piece on
And we've just
gives you the
taken it-
India context.
We've just taken it out of the paywall so everybody can read it.
Yeah.
But we are going to have the second part of it, which will be behind the paywall, which looks at a complication in this, which is religion and manosphere. Religion and incels. Because Andrew Tate converted. There are lots of
Converted to what?
to Islam, right? So there are lots of
Oh, really?
religious, there are lots of religious undertones and overtones to this.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Looking forward to that. So definitely read this piece.
So I have 3 recommendations. One is because we were talking about, this whole EU, America's role. I thought a pretty good, dispassionate conversation on this is one of my favorite podcasts, which is Radio Open Source with Christopher Lydon. He has spoken to Stephen Walt, who talks about what the US's role was, how US is responsible for this war, not Europe. And he gives the historical perspective. And I thought it was extremely refreshing because it was because either people are blaming Russia or people are blaming Ukraine and Biden is a good guy, Trump is a bad guy. this gives a more holistic picture, not leader specific, but a nation or a continent's politics. The second is, I liked this piece in today's Times of India, All History is Violent, Why Pick Only Aurangzeb, by Charmi Harikrishnan in the Times of India. And the third thing, because when I went to Times of India website, this article caught my fancy, and I had to read it. Vastu tips for quick marriage. So I told my mother, Mama, I'm reading it. 50 saal ka ho gaya, main ladka shaadi nahi hui. So it has the following thing: sleep in southwest or northwest bedroom. I only have one bedroom, so I will have to turn my kitchen into a bedroom or something. But the person who's written this is TY Astrology. So Times of India, I'll try to figure that out. So I guess only people who have more than one bedroom can hope for this. Keep a pair of lovebirds or swans in your bedroom.
Swans? How do you keep swans in your bedroom?
Also tell me how to deal with the swan shit, but I'm following this.
More, I want to know.
Then
more.
use light and soothing colors in the bedroom. So, I mean, I do have light in the bedroom, but
Soothing
colors.
Baby pink.
Okay. Pink, peach, yellow, light green might bring long positive. Remove broken or unused items. Do hearts count? Eh, shabash. Okay. Because remove broken clutter,
Apparently,
block,
broken
positive
mirrors
energy.
is inauspicious. No?
Yeah,
That's the
broken
thing.
mirrors,
People
old
say that they
photographs. I have full of old photographs. But, I mean, I keep...
You have to remove yourself then. You have to remove all old things.
Because I'm broke. Yeah, I know. Place a rose quartz crystal in the bedroom. So I've Googled what is rose quartz crystal. Light a ghee lamp in the northwest corner daily.
So
all this to get married.
So much you have to get
What
married.
about the person you're going to get married
So
to?
keep fresh flowers at home.
Okay. They'll just waft
So
in because
flowers
of all the
means
smell.
two I can keep. And avoid dried or dead flowers. They become negativity and delays. They delay
I love
things.
dried flowers, yeah.
So
Is it
you're
done?
already married.
Okay, hello, is this done?
Huh?
Is it done? This
What?
is not going to happen. Is the list over?
No.
Oh God.
Strengthen Venus and Moon energy in your home. So I'll figure out how to strengthen Venus. You wear light colored clothes such as pink, white or pastel.
White you're always wearing.
I've been wearing white for 22 years and I haven't fucking got married. So it doesn't work. But thank you. And the good thing is that
keep swans in your room.
swans in your room. So these
mitti ke swans.
so
It
these
needs
kind
like
of
mud swans.
these kind of practical
Seema is very
solutions.
serious about this.
I'm just because it's got I can oversee or Abhinandan's. It's got crazy ads on it, which are kind of printable.
Yeah,
Which,
so this,
so yeah, well,
this,
this, yeah.
boobs of
We
a woman
cannot
popping
show
out
it
and
to
stuff.
you,
So
yeah,
this is what ad-driven stuff does. You see, if we depend on ads, right under an
Who's that?
article about judge raided 40 crores found, while you are figuring that out, also see these boobs and also see these are the 12 things you need to do if you want to get married. And
Quickly.
it worked. So you see, either we go down that way or you subscribe and pay to keep news free. So yeah, I recommend all you thullas like me.
Thullas nahi.
Single people are called thullas. It's not a cop thing.
Cops.
It later became a cop thing, but back in college, thulla meant a guy who is
Very
single.
old, yeah.
So you can read this article. Link is in the show notes. And tell me how many of you followed this and tell me where you bought your swans. We can all buy together and get a good deal. On that note, thank you, Dhanya.
Thank you.
Thank you, Manisha.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seema.
Thank you very much.
Do contribute to The Wire as well. They do some excellent work and pay to keep news free because when the public pays, the public is served. Otherwise, you'll also have to go to Doordarshan and say, Sudhir ke saath hum bhi contract do.
Sarkari.
Thank you to our sound recordist Anil. Thank you to our wonderful producer Priyali and her junior producer Ashish, who was lurking around somewhere but is not around anymore. We will leave you with this song, which is inspired by what Modi ji said about what journalists should be.
Makhi. Not makhi, madhumakhi.
Yeah. Have a fantastic week.